all kinds of technical issues during the storm, and on some people were having issues with the live feed where I was saying one thing and the slides weren't anywhere near what I was saying. Others, it was working just fine. So I want to do a quick refresh over some of the stuff from last week and then get the last miracle that we didn't get to finish because of me losing my internet at home. And then also on that technical note, the other slides that I had prepared after that are not here now. So I'm going to have to go a different route, so we won't have the typical route that I've been going, but I'll make it through tonight somehow. So I can pull my pointer out here. We are coming up here, number 36 is where we started last week in Luke chapter 17, verse 11 through 19, with Jesus cleansing the 10 lepers. On the way to Jerusalem, he was passing along between Samaria and Galilee. As he entered a village, he was met by 10 lepers who stood at a distance and lifted up their voices, saying, "Jesus, have mercy on us." When he saw them, he said to them, "Go and show yourself to the priest." And as they went, they were cleansed. Then one of them, when he saw that he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice. He fell on his face at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. Now he was a Samaritan. And Jesus answered, "Were not 10 cleansed? Where are the 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" And he said to him, "Rise and go your way. Your faith has made you well." From Jerusalem to Galilee, from Jerusalem, he's passing along between Samaria and Galilee. We're traveling in a southerly direction here. I don't have a map prepared for this, but we're traveling really up to Jerusalem in an elevation route, but we're going south here. And passing through Samaria, which is a route that you don't really see a Jew going, as we've seen in lessons past. But as he enters this village, he's met by these 10 lepers who stand at a distance and lift up their voices. They understand who Jesus is. They understand that Jesus has power to be able to heal them. But for 9 of them, that's kind of as far as it goes. It is kind of like Jesus said, all you're wanting is the miracles. All you're wanting is the show. All you're wanting is the entertainment. There's no substance there for you. You believe in me as far as being able to perform these miracles, but is that really as far as the faith goes? And I think that's a problem in a lot of Christianity today. We want the salvation. We believe in God as far as that healing goes. That's really as far as it goes for us, isn't it? There's really no gratitude to God. There's really no coming back and showing worship to God. There's really no giving God the credit and the glory, as the case is with these 9 lepers. But the one does come back. The one whom we would expect might be the one to shy away, the one to not come back. He is the one to come in and worship, while the 9 that we would expect, being God's people, they just go to their priests and they go through the motions and they make their sacrifices and they show themselves to the priest, and that's the end of it, isn't it? We have to be careful we don't get caught up in that and with worship today, that we just go through the motions. We're here because it's habitual for us. We go to worship and then we're off. We just go make our sacrifices, and that's the end of it for us. That's as far as our Christianity goes. When he saw them, he said, "Go and show yourself to the priest." And as they went, they were cleansed. So again, this is not really that kind of an immediate miracle that Jesus has typically done. As they turn around and they start to walk away, they're still lepers. But as they go their way and they show that obedience to what Jesus has said, the leprosy's gone. And as they went, they were cleansed. Go and show yourselves to the priest. And it's interesting that one of these, a Samaritan, Jesus tells him to do the same thing. Jesus says to the priest. Samaritan doesn't go to the priest. The Samaritan doesn't have that full system. Now they have a kind of an oral tradition that has kind of been that's changed along the way from generation to generation. They still do claim to go back over to Abraham, but a lot of it's changed as it comes down. But it's still not in the Jewish sense of a priest. But Jesus tells them all to go and to do this. And one of them, when he saw he was healed, turned back, praising God with a loud voice, fell on his face at Jesus' feet, giving him thanks. Now, he was a Samaritan. You know, I'm thinking about that is, what priest is he going to, Ryan?
I think that goes to the fact that leprosy, and if you want to read in further into that, sin doesn't care who you are.
Right.
And the remedy for that, he was an outcast with the leprosy, regardless of whoever he was. And you would have known based on the time frame, there was only one way to be allowed back into society. And that would be through because they're using a largely Jewish area, he has to go to the Jewish priest and get cleansed of that.
Right.
It doesn't matter if he's Samaritan or Hebrew or complete Gentile. If he's got leprosy, he's got to go see the people who can declare him
Right.
Leprotic, leprous,
Cleansed. Cleansed.
Make it work here.
Right.
There's only one way to do that.
Yeah.
If you want to read into that as a type and shadow, sin being for leprosy, there's only one way to be clean. Doesn't matter who you are.
Right.
You have to come to our priest,
Yeah.
Christ.
And that's where I was going to take this here. Jesus tells him to go and show himself to the priest. What priest does he go and show himself to? He comes back to Jesus. I mean, as Ryan's pointing out, Jesus is our high priest. Jesus is the one that announces us or pronounces us as cleansed, as bringing us back into a relationship with God and his people. Now, in that, if this Samaritan, as Ryan's saying, is going to a Jewish priest, that's an even greater act of faith on his part, because what is that Jewish priest typically going to do to a Samaritan? He's not even going to give him the time of day. So that's an even greater act of faith on this Samaritan's part, that he would go and show himself to that. But I think that is significant, that go and show yourself to the priest, and he comes back to the real priest, or the one who is going to be the high priest. Yes, sir?
Thinking about the fact,
Mm-hmm.
thinking about the fact that he is a Samaritan reminds us of the story of the Good Samaritan.
Right.
Meaning that a Samaritan just was a kind of a person who had a heart full of compassion. So that's a good thought for him, because, you know, he, well, it's in Luke 15, somewhere along there where
I think so. Yes, sir.
The Good Samaritan.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't only do all he could do right then. He said, you just keep on doing it. Don't never quit doing it. Just always do something. And when I come back, I just pay you. I'll pay you for everything you do.
Right.
So
Yes, sir.
he has a heart full of compassion.
Right. Mm-hmm. Right.
It could also be because he's traveling in an area that's between Galilee and Samaria. There's going to be Samaritans, there's going to be Jews, there's going to be Gentiles in this area. So a Samaritan could go to the Samaritan priest. Doesn't say he has to go to a Jewish priest.
Right.
He has to go to the priest. The Samaritan priest could declare him clean too.
Yeah. So the question, obvious, weren't there 10 of them? Weren't there 10 of you? Where's the other 9? Where's no one found to return and give praise to God except for this foreigner? No, what an indictment against the Jews. That their system is more important than what's right in front of them. And we've seen that with all these other, especially the miracles where Jesus is healing on the Sabbath day, that the system is more important than what is standing right there. And just like the man in John chapter 9, why, here's an amazing thing. This man is given sight to the blind, and you don't know who he is. Brother Bob?
Maybe another shadow in all this too, has to do with you being blind here. I mean, many are called,
Right. Yes, sir.
okay? Many hear the gospel, many do obey the gospel.
Mhm.
But how many stay around?
Right.
How many stay faithful to the one true Christ?
Mhm.
So, you know, it kind of goes back down to the thing of the Bible, Genesis, Revelation. When the Bible talks about few, I guarantee you it means few.
Right.
Okay?
Mhm.
8 souls were saved.
Right.
How many got out of, World War the Flame, the Jordan, Lot, his wife, and $2, and what she knew, he was on the way out.
Mhm.
Look back, 3,
Right.
you know, so it's something to stop and think about. Many see Jesus. Let's just put it that way.
Mhm.
How many actually come to him,
Right.
you know, so we're powerful story in that.
It is. Right.
Think about this, how often this happens today too, because it's, you know, dear God, do this for me, do this for me, dear God, do this for me, do this for me. And how many times do we turn around and just go on with our business once it's done? How many times do
Right.
either we or the world as a whole ask for these things, and we don't turn around and give God the glory and give him the thanks for what he's done?
Yep. It reminds me that this kind of situation here, it kind of reminds me of wearing the cross as jewelry. And, oh, the cross is so important. The cross is so important to me. But I live an absolutely filthy lifestyle. You know, but I've got that cross close to my heart, right? What we talked about earlier, our worship. That's all it is. We come, we offer our sacrifices, we do what God has said, and that's all. Once we leave these doors, I've checked off my box for the week. I've hit that Christianity box, and now I'm off onto something else until the next time rolls around. And what an indictment here. Was no one found to return and give praise to God except for this foreigner? Was there no one else? This foreigner? Where's the Jews? Where are my people in this?
Could we see also that that's showing us the far, that he, of course, was a Samaritan, okay? But maybe looking a little deeper than that, is he not teaching a lesson too on the Gentiles that's going to be coming in?
Yep.
That the word's for all mankind, not only the Jew, but the Greek also?
Right. Well,
Everybody in between?
yeah, like Ryan said, you know, this it didn't pick and choose who it happened to. You know, it wasn't a respecter of persons by any means. And you know, and Christ healing, as you said many times, these healing miracles point towards the spiritual healing that God is going to provide for us. This spiritual healing is not a respecter of persons either.
It's going to get kind of interesting because a lot of times we don't think about the proselytes back in the old Bible.
Right.
Okay? We're going to get your passage of scripture here short in the book of Leviticus that not only pertains to the Jews and their forgiveness of sin and sacrifices, but to also the foreigners.
Mm-hmm.
So, what does that tell you?
Right.
If you accept that system and you operate under that system and you worship under that system, and guess what? You were a Jew.
Right.
But now you may not have been by nationality, but you were.
Mhm.
So, what does that tell us today? Well, we're Christians today throughout the world. We may not be the American nationality, but we're still Christians. It don't matter if you're of the Australian nationality. Guess what? So, you know, you can see a lot of barriers too that he's tearing down. And this is creating a lot of animosity with the Jewish leaders. You know, it's kind of interesting when you look at this. They know what he's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We look at them as being ignorant of the law, where the interpretation and the way it was to be carried out, maybe in some sense they were unskilled and unlearned, but they knew enough about it to know when they get slapped in the face.
Right.
Now, they knew that.
Mm-hmm.
And here he is healing a Samaritan, and guess what you just done to a Jew?
Right.
Oh, they died. They didn't want it, but they died.
Right.
You know
Yes, sir.
what
So, and his response to him is, "Rise and go your way. Your faith has made you well." You know, the faith that you've put into this, the faith that you've shown, has affected your healing. Now, in that, I almost wonder if the other 9 might have showed up at the priest and were still leprous. Their leprosy was back on them. You know, you rise and go your way. Your faith has made you well. That's reading a lot into it. You know, I'm not saying at all that that's what happened, but you know, you came back. You showed gratitude. Your faith has made you well. He was disappointed in those others, and so. Now, again, that's just supposition. That's reading into it. I'm not saying that for sure at all. So, Brother Con and then Daniel.
This is speculation that I'm saying, I don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm thinking that it could, you can almost say that the other 9, when the question is asked, they were not to be found, they stepped out of the realm of obedience.
Mm-hmm.
But this man is still in it. He comes back.
Right.
Give thanks. He's still obeying what he knows is right in the sight of God.
Yeah.
But you know, a lot of folks get in a certain, that realm of obedience that could refer to something happening in the mind, according to their thinking. And it's like, you know, according to your faith, be it unto you.
Right.
You know, if you're thinking right, believing correctly, according to God's word, your faith will make you whole. Yeah, your faith will make you well. And this say He'll make you well, being
Right.
well and whole. There is the same identical meaning.
Mm-hmm. Daniel.
This last statement here, it kind of shows what we were talking about earlier, that the Samaritan came back and saw the true leader, and Jesus didn't tell him to go to the priest like the law says and be integrated back into society.
Right.
He didn't say that. He just said go home.
Yep. You know, everything you wanted is done.
Yeah.
Let's play your thought out here for just a minute. All right? Let's say, and they were healed.
Mm-hmm.
They go to the priest, right? This one came back because he recognized who the real priest was, right?
Right.
So can you follow what? Even though you're cleansed, can you fall back into the world?
Okay. Yes, sir. So, you know, there's a lot of, you know, when you think about it that way and look at this and you compare it over to our relationship with Jesus and our healing, our cleansing from our spiritual leprosy, if you will, you know, a lot of it makes sense. But again, it's, you know, it's there, you know, it doesn't say it, but Jesus he is disappointed in these others. Where are they? They should have been back here like you are. You got the message. These others did not get the message. You know, they may be cleansed and they may be going about their lives, but the most important part of the message here is this Samaritan got it. Rise and go your way. Your faith has made you well. That has cemented your healing. All right. Wrong button. Jesus heals a man with dropsy on the Sabbath. Luke 14, 1 through 6. On one Sabbath, when he went to dine at the house of a ruler of the Pharisees, they were watching him carefully. And behold, there was a man before him who had dropsy. And Jesus responded to the lawyers and Pharisees, saying, "Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not?" But they remained silent. Then he took him and healed him and sent him away. And he said to them, "Which of you, having a son or an ox that has fallen into a well on the Sabbath day, will not immediately pull him out?" And they could not reply to these things. So one Sabbath, he went to dine at the house of the ruler of the Pharisees, and they were watching him carefully. Now, something that jumped out to me as I was going back over this here is, and I probably need to brush up on the exact laws of the Sabbath here, but when you have people coming to dine at your house, there's a lot more work that's involved than just making preparation for your household. The Pharisees are hosting parties, they're hosting all these people together, but there's this one man, you can't heal him. Now we can make all this, we can have our servants and people do all these other things, but you can't heal this one man. You can't do that on the Sabbath day.
And I think you're right, and you run into that when you go back and look at some of the Old Testament ways, deeds, and things like that. You know, sometimes it's hard to grasp what's going on here. You gotta remember that, we gotta remember that a lot of what they did, one was to be able to worship God on the Sabbath.
Right.
They made preparation before. You know, you gotta remember, once you make the preparation and you may fulfill your obligation, what do we do today?
Right.
We make preparation to fulfill our obligation, and once we fulfill our obligation, what do we do then? And here's where the whole thing, I think gets kind of noodled up, even in my mind, is trying to keep it straight about whose law. The Sabbath never forbade you to do that.
Right.
Now, after you fulfilled your obligation of the Sabbath, what then? So where did this fall in the time frame of all this? Fall?
Right.
You know? So, hey, listen. These Pharisees, anyway, they're gonna do what they're gonna do. They're like people of the world, they're gonna do what they're gonna do irregardless. Now, it's okay for us to throw a big party on the side, that's us. But it ain't right for you, see, this is what Edwin
Right.
used to say, you is and they is, okay? You know, it was okay, because it's deism, but it ain't all right for you is.
Right.
Double standard what you got.
Right. Hypocrisy. Hypocrisy. So, all right. The man who had dropsy. And then the word translated is hudropkis from hudor, meaning water. One afflicted with dropsy was swollen because of the excess water in the body, but at the same time, thirsty. You can't get enough to drink, but you're retaining all of this extra water. In the physical affliction, the man with too much water in his body wants nothing more than more water. Very closely related to some of the symptoms with congestive heart failure and things like that. You got a lot of water that's retaining around the heart, around the lungs and such. So very similar to that. Once, and Jesus responded to the lawyers and the Pharisees saying, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? He knows what they're thinking. You got this man sitting there, and they know Jesus is going to do something. They haven't asked it. They're watching him to see what's going to happen, and he goes ahead and jumps ahead of them. Is it lawful for me to do this? Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? And they remained silent. So he took him and healed him and sent him away. And he said to them, which of you, having a son or an ox that has fallen into a well on a Sabbath day, will not immediately pull him out? You know, if you've got an emergency, aren't you going to take care of it? Does, as you were saying, does that interfere with your obligation to the Sabbath? Really, the obligation on the Sabbath was a day of rest. You rested from your labor in the way that God had rested from his labors. Emergency is an emergency. You're not going to leave someone in a pit. That's negligence. That's manslaughter under the old law. I mean, if you refuse to help in that situation and the man dies, you're going to be guilty of manslaughter. So, aren't you going to help? Aren't you going to pull him out? Now, what about just speaking the words and healing an individual? Isn't it less work?
Well, you're training a gnat to swallow a cow.
Right.
You know, you get your own laws and your own ways. And I guess, I was looking at that in the recent things, I don't know the Jewish forums, and it was kind of interesting in how they would explain it just like the way we teach it but they get to a point where they slowly begin to interject the Jewish custom into the law of Moses.
Right.
So it becomes convoluted, okay, with the ideas and opinions of men if you don't watch it. Kind of like a lot of, and I think there's some fairly good translations out there, but you have to watch that. It's kind of like man does the Bible today. They'll slowly put in their twist on it so it fits
Right.
their mode of operation. And, so, yeah, I mean, it never forbids you to do good. I mean, they know that, but
Yeah, they know. They can't reply to those things. They know the answer to it. They just incriminate themselves by answering the question. So, moving on, I think we can get through this next one here real quick. Jesus restores sight to Bartimaeus in Jericho. Going first to Matthew chapter 20. As they went out of Jericho, a great crowd followed him, and behold, there were two blind men sitting by the roadside. When they heard that Jesus was passing by, they cried out, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." The crowd rebuked them, telling them to be silent, but they cried out all the more, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." And stopping, Jesus called them and said, "What do you want me to do for you?" They said to him, "Lord, let our eyes be opened." And Jesus, in pity, touched their eyes, and immediately they recovered their sight and followed him. Typical, the great crowds that are following after Jesus. Two blind men sitting beside the roadside. That's going to be important here in just a moment. Two of them, because in the following accounts, there's only one man. Matthew records two, the others only record one. They heard that Jesus was passing by. "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." And you can't make them be silent. You can't stop them. They're going to cry out. And as they try, they just cry out all the more. "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." And stopping, Jesus called them and said, "What do you want me to do for you?" What is it that you are wanting? No, they are coming to him. They are calling, "Lord, have mercy on me." What is your expectation? And their expectation is, "Let our eyes be opened." Lord, let our eyes be open. And Jesus in pity touched their eyes, and immediately they recovered their sight and followed him. Same situation here, but instead, in Mark chapter 10, 46 through 52, we have Bartimaeus, a blind beggar, the son of Timaeus, sitting by the roadside. We don't hear about the other blind man in Mark. But same thing, "Son of David, have mercy on me." They rebuke him to be silent, and he cries out all the more, "Son of David, have mercy on me." But then we see here, Jesus stopped and said to him, "Call him." And they came to the blind man, saying, "Take heart, get up, he is calling you." Throwing off his cloak, he sprang up and came to Jesus. And Jesus said to him, "What do you want me to do for you?" And the blind man said to him, "Rabbi, let me recover my sight." Jesus said, "Go your way, your faith has made you well." And immediately he recovered his sight and followed him on the way. So Bartimaeus, just the one, same thing, same cry that Mark records here that we saw in Matthew. But something different with this is Jesus stops, and instead of calling out to him and speaking to him like Matthew records, Mark records that the blind man had to come to him. Jesus didn't go over to them and say, "What do you want me to do for you?" Now, Matthew doesn't record that extra step. He just says that he spoke to them. Well, the blind man has to get up, leave everything, and come to him and request that he receive his sight. We talk about this. This is a shadow of our spiritual cleansing. Don't we? What was Paul or Saul told? Get up, arise, be baptized, wash away your sins, calling on the name of the Lord. Baptism, not the putting away the filth of the flesh, but an appeal to God for a good conscience. Through the resurrection of Jesus Christ, we have to leave everything behind. Get up, go to him, and request that salvation. It doesn't come to us in any other way. A little bit different here, but essentially the same thing. And Mark calls him by name, leaves off the other man, but through Matthew, we understand there are two here. Luke's account is basically the exact same thing. There's really nothing different there, except Luke doesn't call him by name like Mark does. Luke just records that there is a blind man sitting by the roadside begging. So essentially the exact same thing as Mark did. So I'm going to try. Now, at the end of this, and we didn't cover this with Mark, but immediately he recovered his sight, followed him, glorifying God, and all the people, when they saw it, gave praise to God. So Bartimaeus becomes a vessel, if you will, just like the blind man that we saw in John. Why is he blind? Is it his fault? Is it his parents' fault? Who sinned? He didn't sin. His parents didn't sin. This is the opportunity for God to be able to shine through this. Same thing with Bartimaeus here. I'm going to go this route. And we'll have to cover Jesus healing the servant's ear next week. Go ahead and grab your hymn books out to hymn number 78. Hymn number 78. Saturday evening, I had picked